hasn't worked out because they have no army, they have no air force, they have no navy, they have no nothing. So it hasn't worked out well. I don't think they've been doing it. Certainly not at a high level. And if they have, it has been very unimpactful.
I don't think they've been doing it.
Wow.
I don't think they've been doing it. I'll
ask Putin.
I'll ask Putin. I'm sorry, Jonathan Lemire, we have to go to you. You have to be twitching. You have to have PTSD because you were the one who asked the question in Helsinki in 2018 whether he believed Vladimir Putin or whether he believed his own intel community, the very people that he put in to run the intel community. And what did he say to you and the world in 2018 in Helsinki?
He made it very clear that he believed Putin, that he sided with Moscow. And we've seen this countless times since. Despite the firestorm of criticism he received for Helsinki, one of the few times, frankly, that the majority of Republicans stood up and denounced him, though the Republican Party was very different in 2018 than it is today. But he is stuck with that. And this here, again, he so often takes Putin's word for it. And he's already laying the groundwork that he suggests he will again. So Richard Haass is going to be up to President Zelensky to make the case today. He shouldn't have to. It should be pretty clear. Again, U.S. intel has suggested that at least in some form, Russia has been helping Iran during this conflict. China, too, I might add. Yet Trump doesn't want to seem to believe it. But this does seem like a high. So talk to us about that. But also the stakes here for Zelensky, who comes to the White House in a very different place than some of his previous visits. It does, though, in perhaps a couple own goals back in Kyiv about shuffling up some of his leadership staff. Zelensky's taking heat at home for that. But in terms of the war itself, Ukraine has momentum. They suddenly had the look of a winner. And if there's one thing we know about Donald Trump, he likes to be associated with winners.
No, look, absolutely. And let's just say on the previous point, yes, Russia's helping Iran. Also, Iran is helping Russia. With its drones and so forth. And it's part of the emergence of a kind of alignment. I wouldn't call it quite an alliance. China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, and that's just an unfortunate reality in today's world. But Zelensky, I think the larger point is, Zelensky comes here with some wind at his back, despite the political machinations in Kyiv. He's taking the war and really weakening the Russian position in 2014, in Crimea, which they've held since 2014. He is attacking Russian energy infrastructure in Siberia. He has made it clear that even in Moscow or St. Petersburg, Putin and other Russians are not safe. Russia's not gaining territory. Indeed, they seem to be recently losing territory. So I actually think the war has shifted in important ways. We can't really help Ukraine that much. Our cupboard militarily is pretty bare right now. We don't have the defense industrial base to produce stuff. We've used up an enormous amount of munitions in the Middle East, which is a conversation for another day. We've got a real national crisis there. What we can do, though, is provide at least a few Patriots to air defense missiles to Ukraine. More important is put more economic pressure on Russia. And this is where the two crises come together, Jonathan. If we could get the Strait open, that would lower global energy prices. Guess what? That's the equivalent of a sanction against Putin because Russia's economy is so one-dimensional. So I actually think these two crises come together. That's the biggest way we can help Ukraine is by amping up economic pressure on Putin because the political and economic pressure is growing against Putin. And that sets the stage for a possible ceasefire in place. Donald Trump, since day one, has talked about he's going to get a peace in Ukraine. Well, he can't get peace there, but he could get a ceasefire. And I think increasingly the table is being set for that possibility.
So, David Remnick, not for the first time, we have American intelligence indicating that the Russians are allowing tracking and spotting, targeting places in Ukraine, in the Middle East, on behalf of themselves and their allies. And the President of the United States seems not only not to recognize this, but not to want to talk about it.
Well, he chooses not to. He has this inchoate, crazy faith in big dictators like Xi and Putin especially. It's absolutely bewildering. And it's hard to know what to point to first, the strategic stupidity or the moral failure. And that that's not just today, it's not just this week, but it characterizes this presidency. And I think going into the midterm elections, a lot of Americans who were on board for much of Trumpism, I certainly don't count myself as one of them, but are going to see the combination of strategic failure resulting in higher prices at the gas pump, combined with a president who just brazenly is profiting off his own presidency, is enriching himself while immiserating so many others, including his own voters, that I think that's going to add to the potential of a real drubbing in November. I don't make predictions, but I think those two issues, side by side, corruption, where self-dealing is going on, including in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and the rest, combined with the colossal strategic foolishness of this war, when his promise was quite the opposite, is going to be a real problem at the ballot box. And I think Trump, A, knows it, and B, doesn't know how to undo it.
Speaking of midterms, David, it strikes me that what Trump wants is pretty much the opposite of what Netanyahu wants. And I'm just wondering, what is your sense of how you think? I mean, they can't both win this, right? So where do you think this goes and how? I think
America, very clearly, Trump has tried to assert his primacy over the Israelis. You know, you see it in Maggie Haberman. You see it in that book, throughout the book, Regime Change, where Trump wants to assert his alpha male self over Netanyahu, and not only wants to do it, the administration is very quick to distribute that information so that the rest of us know it. There's one phone call in particular in that book where he just berates him and says, everybody hates you. The Jews hate you, at one point, he says, including the two Jews that are on this line, which I presume was Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Somebody very helpfully leaked those conversations, and you hear about them every day in Israel as a result, as well as in the United States.
All right, editor of The New Yorker, David Remnick, thank you so much for coming on this morning. His latest piece, titled How Netanyahu's Top General Became His Strongest Challenger, is online now.
And the man who's going to be going to parades throughout the day celebrating his birthday, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, thank you as well.